Hey there, Grumpy Old Fart here. This is a compilation video of some of my greatest hits. Hope y'all enjoy them. Neural nanostructures. And I read about this and it struck me as intriguing because we're taught one thing in anthropology and in archaeology, and this literally flies in the face of it. There was a geological research mission into the Ural Mountains in Russia, and ostensibly they were looking for gold, but they ended up finding something very peculiar. Found a bunch of pieces. Okay, these pieces recovered are coils, spirals, and shafts. The largest pieces are made of copper. The smaller pieces are tungsten and molybdenum. Extensive research at the Russian Academy of Science has concluded that they are not natural formations. They were, in fact, manufactured. According to Dr. E.W., let me get this name right, Dr. E.W. Matveyeva, 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 of the Section for Geology, Prospecting Techniques, and Economics of Precious Metal Alluvial Deposits. That's a hell of a title there. The Section for Geology, Prospecting Techniques, and Economics of Precious Metal Alluvial Deposits. According to this doctor, E.W. Matveyeva, the layers where these pieces were found dates them between 100,000 and 300,000 years old. So, this is what they're saying. Sometime back between 100,000 and 300,000 years ago, someone with technological capabilities constructed these sophisticated nanostructures. That's just ridiculous. Mainstream archaeology and anthropology says that 100,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had just appeared, and they were just learning how to knap flint to make sharp blades. And this just blows it out of the water. Something definitely does not add up. There was a man named Michael Cremo, Dr. Michael Cremo. He wrote a book called Forbidden Archaeology, and he talks about different things that are being found at depths that it shouldn't be there. Where ancient technology, human beings developing a lot earlier than what we're told, and this flies right into that because 300,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago even, there was no way anybody could have made these parts. You need sophisticated machining equipment for this. This isn't some guy sitting there carving, honing with a file or something. No, they were manufactured on a machine. And 100,000 years ago, these machines didn't exist. The blades that I've seen from 100,000 years ago didn't even have handles. They were pieces of flint. You held them like this, and the blade was down here. I mean, what they're saying, the people that did this were advanced, highly advanced. We can make stuff like that today, but we need specialized CNC equipment and things like that. There's a lot of different authors out there who are researchers who are finding machined items. I did another video, ancient machining techniques in ancient Egypt, or something along those lines. You can check that out. There's a number of different researchers who are finding that. They can't all be making it up. They can't all be wrong. These people are learned. They graduated from high school, from high school, and then from college. They've got advanced degrees. They can't all be wrong. My point is, what we're being told isn't always accurate. And rather than fix the timeline, in other words, okay, we were wrong about this. Let's go back and take another look at it. Mainstream archaeology won't even listen to it. It's crap, but there it is. And it makes you wonder what else we're not being told, or what else that they got wrong and they're not willing to admit to. It's like the what was it? The mastodon, where they had fossilized bones, and inside they had soft tissue, which shouldn't have existed. Extraterrestrial anomalies, and I've mentioned some of these in some other videos that I did, but it was more of a kind of in passing kind of thing. And I've noticed that there's a lot of these anomalies that people really can't explain. And the part that strikes me is people aren't trying to explain them. And now that the Pentagon and the U.S. Navy have both announced that UFOs are real, we now have the Space Force, which is supposed to be protecting our satellites, but God knows what they're actually doing. I thought that maybe these extraterrestrial anomalies might bear some more attention. So, here we go. For decades, man has been sending craft to study Mars, the moon, the rest of the solar system. They've got one that's just heading out past the last planet in the solar system, as I understand it now. I forget what it's called. Voyager, maybe? I don't know. But my point is, they're doing it. They're looking around. They're trying to find out what's in our solar system. And they're finding they're taking photographs and video of things that shouldn't be there, that don't look right. They're not supposed to be there. They don't make sense. They can't explain, that kind of thing. Right now, orbital craft have photographed Mars and have caught hundreds of unexplained anomalous objects on film, including humanoid figures. And by the way, they've got stuff on the planet as well, on Mars, Mars rovers and things like that. Humanoid figures, stuff that looks like buildings, glass tubes, towers, domes, pyramids, monoliths, even statues. Not to mention the famous face on Mars, which they're now trying to claim was a trick of the light. I don't know. That's a heck of a trick of the light, is my understanding. But there's a lot of stuff that they're seeing on the surface of Mars that frankly shouldn't be there. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't look natural. They've seen lights moving around on the surface. There's one where they had well, that might have been on the moon. I'll come back to that one. But my point is, ground craft called rovers, the Mars rovers, have captured many more such photos. One such photo seems to capture the shadow of a humanoid standing next to the rover itself, like it's reaching up to fix something or to adjust something. Also, there's all kinds of unexplained lights that are moving all over the place. They've got what look like openings with landing lights. One guy has I was watching this is going to sound weird. I was watching a YouTube video where this guy was giving a lecture and he was showing some of the anomalous things that they've found on Mars. He has something on a photo of what looks like a humanoid cat playing air guitar. That sounds so freaking stupid, I know. But it's on YouTube. If you can find it, watch it. It's funny as hell. The guy does a good lecture. The moon also has other such anomalies like this as well, including what looks like a radar dish sticking up like that. I'm sorry, that cannot possibly be natural. And next to this radar dish, there's what looks like it's a crater, but it's got what looks like a fortress on the side, and there's what looks like a pipe or a gun emplacement sticking out of it. It's crazy looking. If you can find some of these videos on YouTube, do it. There's one guy that has an actual special. I think we watched it on Hulu or maybe Amazon Prime. I'm not sure which, but I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube as well. But the stuff, the pictures that they've got off the moon are just ridiculously weird. Stuff that shouldn't be there, that doesn't look natural. Towers that jut up miles off the surface. I did lots of videos on that. The moon, unexplained phenomena of the moon. Go check that out. NASA satellite and probe photos have captured what look like spacecraft against the backdrop of comets and other stellar bodies. There's a man named Jaime Musan. I talk about him a lot in my UFO videos. He has lectures where he puts forth photos that people have taken, and he has one photo. It stuck out in my mind. It looks like a spaceship on the front of, passing in front of a comet, and then later on, that spaceship apparently has landed on that planet. Now, if that's from Earth, buddy, they're hiding it well. But my point is, it doesn't look like an Earth craft. But what do I know? It may be. I don't know. But there's definitely something there. There's a lot of other photos that NASA has captured that shouldn't be. For example, you can't see the craft, but you can see the light coming off the sun. It's because they're photographing the sun along the edge of the sun, and it's what looks like a large orb with the light around it, like it's hitting a field of some kind. And at the same time, it's got energy tendrils coming off the sun towards this sphere. It looks like there's a craft, a large, huge craft, drawing power from the sun. And that you can't fake that. You got to see the videos and photos. It's ridiculous. If you get a chance to check some of these out, do so. There's lots of them out there that simply cannot be explained, and a lot of people have tried. A lot of people at NASA don't even want to talk about them. When government agencies don't want to talk about something, there's something to it. That's all I'm saying. Even on the Isle of Man, I didn't know much about this place until just very recently, and I found a whole bunch of articles that people have written. Get a drink right quick. That people have written about the weird shenanigans that go on there. And I did a video. The reason I looked it up at all was because I did a video about a U-boat a couple weeks ago. And so, yeah, I started doing a little bit of research, and here we go. The Isle of Man. The Isle of Man is an island of 29,000 square kilometers that is between Ireland and the United Kingdom. But it is not part of Great Britain. It is a strange, strange island. The Isle of Man is a registered UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. So they think it's important for a number of reasons, nature-wise and like that, and that's cool. Got no problem with that. We have to preserve nature, and everybody wants clean air and clean water. There's things on the Isle of Man that don't appear elsewhere, nature-wise. Critters and trees and things like that. So, amen. For generations, this island has been a home to smugglers and pirates. There are stories that go back almost 1,000 years about that. So, it is home to some of the most extraordinary archaeological sites in the world. Some of these sites are over 8,000 years old. That's 6,000 years before Christ. One of these sites is the burial site of the Pagan Lady. It's a specific burial site. It's the richest Viking female burial site outside of Scandinavia, and it dates back to 950 AD. So the Vikings were there. The Isle of Man is one of the most prolific UFO hotspots in the world. Given the relative low population of the island, this is compounded into an even more prolific hotspot, because if you have an area with 1,000 people in it and they're seeing, twice as many UFOs as in other places, that's cool. But if their area only has 100 people in it, it's the same size area, and they're still seeing that much, that means those people see UFOs quite a bit. I'm just saying. Fewer people, but the same amount of sightings. The Isle is home to the gravesite of Matthew Hassel and his wife. I want to say his wife's name is Margaret, but don't quote me. Hassel committed suicide back in 1880s. And as they were about to bury him, he gasped and opened his eyes. Fearing that he was a vampire, they drove a wooden stake through his heart before burying him. The grave is dated in the 1880s. They literally have a vampire grave. It's surrounded by chains and steel poles and like that to keep people out or to keep him in, whatever. The point being, they have a vampire gravesite, a registered vampire gravesite there. At one point or another, virtually every inhabited place on the Isle of Man has been reported to be haunted. The reports vary from apparitions to disembodied voices to footprints, footsteps. Phantom pirate ships have been seen offshore. The place is eerie, to say the least. Sea creatures have been reported in the area for thousands of years. Sea monsters, sea serpents, things like that. These range from serpents to dinosaurs to merfolk. I did a video here a while back. In World War I, a German submarine, U-boat 85, had a run-in with what can only be described as a prehistoric amphibious dinosaur. Check out my video on U-boat 85. The Isle of Man is reportedly the home of fairies. If you walk in the woods on that island, be sure to greet them aloud and respectfully ask permission to traverse their woods, or they may pay you a visit. That's the local folklore. Any way you want to look at it, the Isle of Man has a long and storied past, may very well be a paranormal crossroads of sorts. I would very much love to visit that place. I'm a huge fan of the paranormal. I would love to see a fairy. I would love to see UFOs there. I would love to see a sea monster in the ocean from the shore, of course. I don't do boats. I can't swim very well. But my point is, I would love to visit that place. Unexplained roadway. The Devil's Highway. Route 666. And yes, that was a real place. A real highway. Route 666. Debuted, like all U.S. highways, in 1926 and started in Cortez, Colorado. It wound through the Four Corners area into Arizona and back into New Mexico, where it ended in Gallup, New Mexico. It's a very challenging route to drive, lots of twists and turns, but the scenery is absolutely gorgeous. Over the years, it was extended north to Monticello, Utah. Route 666 was the sixth road off of historic Route 66. There is a Route 665 and 667, so the naming of the route was not nefarious in any way. That it just happened to be the sixth road, so 666. In 2003, the route's designation was changed to U.S. Highway 491 due to public pressure. I can imagine few people felt comfortable driving on any road littered with signs that read 666. That's just me, I guess. I don't know. But I can understand that. If ever there was a stretch of highway anywhere in the world that could claim to be cursed, Route 666 was it. Listen to this. The myriad of small towns along Route 66 boast some of the most prevalent hauntings in America. There's not a town along the way that doesn't have the feel of a haunted house. The town itself has that feel. And the stories of the various hauntings will chill you to your core. They're all along that route. There's not a town there that doesn't have a haunting or some sort of a malevolent folklore. Phantom hitchhikers litter the route, even to the point of harassing law enforcement officers. More than once, a state police officer will stop to talk to a hitchhiker only to find the pedestrian has vanished with no explanation and nowhere to have fled to. I did a video on roadside phantoms. Go check that out. There are people who pick up hitchhikers there and they travel a while and then look over and they're gone. There's other people who have reported picking up a hitchhiker. They drive them to a town only to find out later that this hitchhiker is there a lot and is the ghost of a person who died on the road, that kind of thing. It's crazy. Many motorists report stopping to help a mysterious little girl
in a white dress, only to have the child vanish. You see a little girl in a dress by the side of the road, you stop to help. You know, I mean, everybody does. That's common human decency. But then the child vanishes, sometimes from the back seat of a moving vehicle. It's crazy. Packs of demonic dogs have been reported all along the route. Their glowing yellow eyes staring at passing motorists. I'm sorry, that would freak me the hell right out. I would gun the engine and just drive on. I mean, fuck that. I'm sorry. Many motorists report time anomalies along the route. 45-minute trips take 4 to 6 hours, and sometimes a 6-hour trip is finished in an hour or less. Yeah, that happens a lot along Route 666. Some motorists report leaving Gallup and traveling north on Route 666, only to arrive back in Gallup 3 hours later. Somehow they got turned around and they ended up back in Gallup. This happens a lot. And it happens in other towns too. Somewhere along, they'll leave a town on that route and they'll drive for a while and then end up back in that town. And they never turned around. They kept going one direction, at least as far as they knew. Such misdirectional driving is fairly common. More than once, motorists report being chased by bands of American Indians, Native Americans, First Americans, whatever your preferred term is. And these American Indians, these First Americans, are apparently on the warpath. They had painted faces and wore lances and bows. So yeah, that they seem right out of the Old West. I mean, that would freak me too. Skinwalkers evidently target motorists on Route 666. Sometimes animals will appear out of thin air on the road, causing drivers to swerve and crash. Then the animals are seen to morph into birds and fly away, or into humans and run off into the night. If that didn't work, sometimes determined skinwalkers would appear in the back seat of moving vehicles to frighten or attack the occupants. Yeah, so apparently they get violent sometimes. I'm just telling you what I researched here. Route 666 runs through some of the most prolific UFO hotspots in America, so naturally many motorists see a plethora of UFOs along that route. Missing persons and abandoned vehicles are an almost weekly occurrence along the Devil's Highway. It's if it wasn't so serious, it would be fun, I guess. Fun's not the right word. If it wasn't so serious and people were actually affected by it, it would be a hell of a thing to go see. As I stated earlier, the designation of Route 666 was changed in 2003, but that didn't seem to slow down the paranormal hijinks. The weird goings-on continue seemingly unabated. If you feel brave or just want to experience the paranormal, take a drive on Highway 491. Who knows? Maybe you'll discover why they call it the Devil's Highway. Since 1910, evidently, large UFOs have been observed around Saturn's rings by observers, astronomers, telescopes, that kind of thing. And even modern observers have seen these. It started back in 1910 with, dudes with telescopes. Now, modern probes and like that have seen it. Both Voyager probes, 1 and 2, have seen it. The Cassini probe has seen multiple objects. The Hubble telescope has captured them. And keep in mind that the distances, we're estimating the size of these things. So bear with me on that. We see dozens of different UFOs. Some cigar-shaped, very large. Some of them over 50,000 miles long, and they have visible portholes. Smaller cigar-shaped UFOs with windows and cargo bays have been observed going from the rings to Saturn and back, and then to these UFOs and back. So I guess they're acting like shuttlecraft or whatever. These UFOs, all of them have definitive flight paths, and they avoid collision. They're exhibiting intelligent maneuvers.
some of these UFOs seem to be, it's been theorized, collecting debris from Saturn's rings. Now, again, I had just found out about this. I had not heard anything about this, and I do a series of UFO videos on my channel where I talk about old encounters and stuff. And this is the first I've heard of this. I research UFOs, and this is the first I've heard about it. It's crazy. It's not in the news any news that I heard. There's a NASA scientist named Dr. Norman Bergeron, Bergeron, Bergeron. I'm gonna say Bergeron. If I mispronounce it, I apologize, sir. You deserve to have your name right. Everybody, said right. Everybody does. You got to have it pronounced right. I'm going to say Bergeron. This guy wrote a book about these things called The Ring Makers. This guy's a very well-respected scientist. He's not a kook. This guy, he works for NASA. Okay, they don't have kooks there. These UFOs are seen more and more often as time goes. Neither NASA nor SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, can explain these photos and videos of the UFOs. And another bit of information, Saturn is infamous for lots of background radio signals. A lot of people think a lot of the debris in the rings might be radioactive, and that's where we get but radio signals are a whole different critter. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. Now, there's another thing that we need to be aware of. In 1989, the Russian probe Phobos 2 was en route to photograph the Martian moon Phobos. It photographed a large cigar-shaped UFO. That UFO seemed to be approaching it, and then Phobos 2 was lost. So we don't know if that's related to this or not, but the description of the UFO is very similar. If these UFOs in our solar system are real, they may very well pose a credible threat to humanity. Vessels that large could accidentally kill a lot of people and might not even realize that we're here. Animals have been found embedded in stone, completely embedded in the stone, completely sealed in there. They're extracted and then later come to life. I very seriously doubt they sing and dance, but, they do come to life. In 1761, Ambroise, Ambroise, however you pronounce that, Paré, the physician to Henry III of France, told of witnessing a quarryman break open a stone and a live toad jumped out. The quarryman had said this was not the first time it had happened. So that's a mention in passing. It was actually written down. It's part of the official record. 1860, or excuse me, I'll go to 1821. Tillich's Philosophical Magazine reported a stonemason named David Virtue found a live lizard embedded in stone at about 22 feet deep. So, and it's not like there's a tunnel there and he happened to find the rock. No, this was completely embedded in the stone. And it was alive. I'm just telling you what the document said. 1865. Hartlepool Free Press reported another toad freed from a block of magnesium limestone at about 25 foot deep. Completely embedded in stone. Approximately 1865 still, the Scientific American related the same story from a silver miner with a 2-foot diameter boulder. It was a boulder, he broke it open, inside was a live frog. And there's similar stories from all over: World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and even some in modern times. 1876, timbermen in South Africa, they had a log and they were cutting it into planks. And they found 68 small toads in there. And they were all alive. They all jumped out and started hopping away. It's crazy. That to me makes a little more sense than the stone, because at least they're inside a living tree, so I guess they could have something to eat. I don't know. It's not stone. Such animals are also found in plaster walls and concrete floors, sealed for decades. Now, if you have a if you build a house and an animal gets stuck in the concrete, you can pull it out and it might live. But if you have a house there and it's sealed for decades, and then you're breaking open the foundation and boom, it's concrete floor and the frog jumps out, yeah, that's going to get your attention. 1976, Fort Worth, Texas. A construction crew was breaking up some concrete they had set just a year before. Within the concrete, in an air pocket that matched the shape of the creature's body, a living green turtle was found. It was set a year before. To date, there's no explanation for this phenomenon. Either these animals can exist for extended periods of time without oxygen, food, and water, or there's something really freaking weird going on, and I couldn't tell you what it is. I got no explanation for this. Giants with horned skulls. And when I first read this, I thought it was a joke or some kind of a farce, hoax. But the more research I did, I kept finding weird stuff that is hard to explain, so I'm going to include it. I'm going to make this an actual video, so here we go. In the 1800s, a group of archaeologists, and I want to get the exact date, but I can't. It's not published anywhere that I can find. I know it's in the 1800s. Late 1800s. A group of archaeologists, including a Pennsylvania state historian, 2 professors, and a member of the Presbyterian church hierarchy, went to the town of Sayre in Bradford County, Pennsylvania. They discovered a series of burial mounds where they unearthed a number of skeletons. The average height of these skeletons was over 7 feet tall. So, that's a big person, period. The skulls of these giants had 2 distinct horns, which were integral parts of the skulls. They were not added later. They weren't pasted on. They weren't stuck in there. They were part of the skull. They grew from the bone in the skull. They were integral parts. The burial date of these skeletons was estimated at about 1200 AD. Essentially, we had 7-foot giants with horns who died almost 800 years ago. And that's a mouthful. So, let's talk about what happened with these things. This is the part that gets me. The remains were sent to the American Investigation Museum in Philadelphia for closer examination. Scientists puzzled over these skeletons for months, and inquiries were made to other museums in Germany, France, Egypt, other places like that. And nothing ever came of it. None of the archaeological group had made public anything about these giant skeletons with horns. Yet, articles about the strange discovery appeared in journals and magazines. Someone at the American Investigation Museum talked about them. Somebody leaked it. And these magazines and newspapers were publishing articles about them. The skulls were later claimed to have been lost, misplaced, or stolen from the museum. So they're gone. We can't even examine them now. Museums, I've talked about this in some other videos, museums losing artifacts or changing information about the artifacts to fit their narrative is not unheard of. Egyptian artifacts were allegedly lost from the Smithsonian, and these artifacts were evidently or allegedly found in the Grand Canyon. There's an abundance of evidence for this to have actually happened, but again, the Smithsonian Institute lost them. And these Egyptian artifacts were supposedly found from a dig in the 1900s in a cave in the Grand Canyon. And it's one thing, this is the part that gets me. You keep hearing how science knows this and science knows that. Well, how do they know it? They've investigated. How are they investigating it? They use what's called the scientific method. they're not using the scientific method when they hide artifacts that they can't explain. If you have an explanation or a theory that you're looking to prove, and you find artifacts or information or whatever that blows that narrative out of the water, disproves your theory, you don't hide it, you come up with a new theory. That's the scientific method. You make a theory, you find out if it's true. If you can disprove it, it's not true. Okay? Now, it's one thing to prove artifacts are fakes or to otherwise legitimately discredit them through, bad dating or whatever. They got the date wrong, which, by the way, there are people in museums who've been caught changing the dates on artifacts. That kind of thing. It's one thing to disprove an artifact, but when they just make valid and real artifacts disappear because they don't fit the official narrative, that's not science. Whatever it is, it's not science. Okay? So do some research into this, and I'd love to read your comments. This is a crazy story. Again, I thought it was a joke, and it may very well be a hoax. I don't know, but I can't disprove it. I can't. The articles in the magazines and the newspapers about this was there. They were posting this. I think maybe the people in the museum were ashamed that they couldn't find a way to explain it, and in their narrative, and so these skeletons with the horned skulls disappeared. That's my theory. Again, can't prove it, so I'm not making no allegations one way or the other. My contention is, if you have an artifact that doesn't fit your narrative is shit. Recently, a tomb robber in the Nazca area found a number of mummies. 3 of these mummies are very, very strange. They seem to be more reptilian. They have 3 fingers and 3 toes. They're very, very small. There's 2 males and 1 female. They have elongated skulls. These mummies were naturally mummified instead of through a mummification ritual like they do in Egypt and like that. This was the conditions where they died naturally mummified them to keep them fresh, for lack of a better word. These mummies are perfectly preserved and were extensively studied by professional scientists. Much of the study was done in Colorado. Some of the DNA testing, as I understand it, was done in Russia. Other mummies were found in the same tomb. There were 2 different types of mummies found, and neither of them apparently were completely human. The mummies have only 25% human DNA. The other 75% of the DNA does not match anything else on Earth. These are literally alien mummies. The person who found the mummies claims that inside the tomb were structures which he described as a citadel. So this is whoever put these mummies in there, they wanted them protected. The Peruvian government immediately dismissed these findings as a hoax. So naturally, no other news service will touch them. We have scientific studies in Colorado and in Russia verifying the authenticity of the mummies, but they are immediately dismissed as hoaxes. Scientific advancement, I can't even read my own writing. Scientific advancement cannot occur unless real investigations are made, and the findings thereof are discussed openly. These mummies should be in the forefront of every news agency in the world. 75% of the DNA of these things aren't even human. They're not from Earth. What are we supposed to make of that? In other words, for those of you who are a little ignorant of this, let me explain. Ignorant was a strong word. For those of you who don't understand, let me explain. You have 2 people, one human, one not. They make a baby. That baby is now half human. So then this baby has a human pairing. They make a baby. That baby is now quarter human. Okay, so we're talking multi-generational. You got to see these mummies. They don't look human. They look like those little gray alien dudes. There's nothing about these that says human. And even the ones that are normal human sized don't appear human. I maintain that there is a veil of secrecy shrouding anything that does not fit the archaeological story, the narrative that scientists are trying to put forth. And that's what it is. It's a story. It doesn't make sense. There's a man named Michael Cremo who does a book called Forbidden Archaeology. I've got it in there. It's about that thick. It's a hard read to get through, but the information in it is freaking awesome. They're finding things now that don't fit the archaeological record, the anthropological record. People say, well, they can't possibly have anything like Bigfoot. Bigfoot can't possibly exist. Really? There was a fish caught off the coast of Africa. It's called a coelacanth. Coelacanth is supposed to have been extinct for 65 million years. They caught one. In Vietnam, we fought a war in the 60s and early 70s. Well, in the mid-70s, after the war, they found an entirely new species of antelope. This antelope hides in the water and breathes through the top of its head. Nobody bothered to see it. Nobody knew it was there. We fought a war there. We had hundreds of thousands of people running through the jungle with guns shooting each other. Nobody saw it? Nobody? Really? According to cryptozoologists, Bigfoot is the master of its domain. Bigfoot could conceivably exist because where would you see Bigfoot? Accidental sightings. You're driving along and he crosses ahead of you. In front, at the limit of your lights. You're hiking in the woods. Oh, what the hell's that? Look over there. He doesn't know you're there, so he doesn't know to hide. If he knows you're coming, he can hide. He's the master of his domain. Bigfoot could conceivably exist. I'm not saying he does. I'm using it as an example. Saying these mummies are hoaxes completely discounts any scientific investigation. And it's all bullshit. There's more out there to learn than what we've already learned. If at any point the human species decides that they know everything, we're fucked.
Mexican extraterrestrial fossils. Mexico leaped into the UFO UAP debate with both feet this week. Mexico has long been a hotspot for UFO and alien activity. The renowned UFO investigative journalist Jaime Maussan hangs his hat in Mexico, and I'm a huge fan of his work. I've done lots of UFO alien videos about stuff that happened in Mexico. Go check them out. I also did a UFO Legends video on Jaime Maussan. Go check that one out. This last week, Mexico really upped their game. 2 mummified corpses, allegedly of non-human aliens, were showcased before the Congress of Mexico by this UFO expert, Jaime Maussan. They're holding hearings there, apparently like our UFO hearings, so it's become a big deal there, just like it is here. The 2 bodies had only 3 fingers on each hand, and their heads were elongated like E.T. heads in classic sci-fi. They were displayed in windowed boxes for a public congressional hearing on UAPs on Tuesday. The hearing was set to rule on the phenomena in the Aerial Space Protection Law, which could turn Mexico into the first country to acknowledge the presence of aliens on the planet. This is a big deal. This is a very big deal, folks. The corpses are believed to be between 700 and 1800 years old, with x-rays showing that one has mysterious eggs inside, what looks like eggs. The ufologist Jaime Maussan made the extraordinary claim that the corpses possessed a genetic composition roughly 30% distinctly different from human beings. So They're only 70% human, or at least what could pass for human. 30% of it is distinctly not human. These were not beings found after a UFO crash. They were found in diatom, algae mines, in deep mines, and were later fossilized. The ancient specimens were retrieved from Cusco, Peru in 2017. Jaime Maussan said that this is the first time that ET life has presented in such a form, and he thinks there is a clear demonstration that we are dealing with non-human specimens not related to any other species in our world. This is a huge deal. This, if this is accurate, this says that aliens were on our world at least 700 years ago. And not only were they here, but they stayed. They interacted with humans. Because if there's a portion of the DNA is not human, that means a portion of it is not human. You see what I'm saying? If a portion of it is human, but only a portion, that means a portion of it is not human. Maybe the aliens were interacting, interbreeding. Hybrids. Now, many people are calling this a hoax. I would rather. Jaime Maussan, if you've done your research into his background, this guy's a serious journalist. This guy doesn't present stuff willy-nilly or half-cocked. If he says something, you can take it to the bank. This guy is a serious journalist. He is better than that. If somebody else was going to do a hoax, maybe, but not this guy. This guy, he's in it to win it, as it were. If these bodies truly contain non-human DNA, then the entire world is going to have to sit up and take notice. They won't have a choice. This is one of those, and especially if Mexico passes a law acknowledging that aliens are here or have been here, then that's a huge deal. Again, the entire world will have to sit up and take notice. Nobody will be able to sweep that under the rug. That's all I'm saying. I hope this finds, and what we need to do is get those bodies tested by everyone, not one company and then they come to a finding and okay, yeah, you can sweep that under the rug, or we'll pay them to change it or whatever. We're talking 20 companies all around the world, at least 20, maybe 100, 500 companies all around the world do their DNA testing, and then they all present their findings one after the other, separately. That's what I would do, because they can't possibly undermine or bribe them all. You see what I'm saying? It's crazy, but that's what we've seen happening time and time again. So, the Mexican ET fossil update. I did a video which was uploaded a few months ago titled The Mexican ET Fossils. Go check that video out. In that video, I talked about fossilized remains which were presented to the Mexican Congress. These fossils were allegedly extraterrestrial in origin. They were found in Peru, deep in a mine. And there may be some issues with the Peru not giving permission to take those out. So I'm not sure what that's about, but I figured I'd better mention that. Anyway, in that video, I said that the fossilized remains needed to be tested to determine if they were real or not. Because of all of the there was a lot of people who were saying it was a hoax. They discredited Jaime Maussan and like that. And if you don't know who Jaime Maussan is, he is a legend in the UFO community. They say he's a crackpot or a charlatan, and I beg to differ. I said they needed to be tested to determine if they were real or not. Well, here we go. Renowned researchers from several universities and laboratories in Mexico have studied and tested the fossilized remains. The test proved that the fossils are genuine creatures with a biological existence. These things are a new breed of non-human without lungs or ribs. They have lightweight but sturdy bones. They naturally have no teeth. It's not like the teeth were pulled out or they lost them or whatever. These things never had teeth to begin with. Both specimens had implants in the body made of cadmium and osmium, which are two of the rarest elements on Earth. One of the mummies was pregnant with what appeared to be eggs. This is what these scientists determined. Anthropologist Roger Zuniga from the National University of San Luis Gonzaga in Ica, Peru. ICA is how you spell it, so however you want to pronounce it. Anyway, he stated that anthropologist Dr. Zuniga stated that, quote, "These beings are real. No human intervention was involved in their physical and biological formation." That's a quote. Let me say that again. These beings are real. No human intervention was involved in their physical and biological formation. Furthermore, a letter signed by 11 researchers from that university confirmed the authenticity of the mummies, these fossilized remains. That is a lot of information to bring in. They accused Jaime Maussan of being a charlatan, of lying, and he said, "Hold my beer, buddy," and he went and got people who could verify it. The way I see it, we have fossils which have been proven to be authentic biological beings. They have no lungs, no ribs, lightweight, sturdy bones, and no teeth. They each have implants made of some of the most rarest elements on Earth. One of the specimens was pregnant with eggs. These are humanoids. Okay? I don't care who you are. That's not human. That is not human. They are biological beings who are not human. There's no other way to put that. Rather than dance around the subject like a politician running for office, why don't we just come out and say it? They are aliens. And damn the ones who accuse Jaime Maussan. That dude is about as credible as anybody I've ever seen in the UFO community. Okay? This guy accepts videos and photos from all over his country and all over the world even. And these people who send him this stuff send it anonymously. So, and Jaime Maussan is a credible, real journalist. This guy is as upstanding as they get. He didn't want to join the UFO community. He was asked to do a short little UFO type show on Sunday nights to kill time on the air on TV, and that little 30-minute clip, that little 30-minute program blossomed into one of the biggest UFO phenomena on the planet. He didn't choose to join the UFO community. The UFO community chose him. It's that simple, because they respect him. All right. So he's jumped into it with both feet. He's doing his work as a journalist, and people are still insulting him. I don't get that. All the people who said he was a charlatan, he needs to sue the piss out of them. He needs to get as much money as he can to further his research, or hell, put his kids through college or whatever, because he deserves it. He was his legitimacy, his I don't know, his stature, his credibility was impugned, and those people need to take that. They need to walk that shit back. That's all I'm saying. At least an apology, because the man's doing his job. He's reporting what he knows, period. Anyway, so they were actually real biological beings, fossilized remains found in a mine, I think in Peru. So nobody can dispute that. That is in front of the world now. Jaime Maussan did his job. He reported the facts. Now it's up to us to deal with it. The Mexican alien BS. I don't normally do this when it comes to science or unexplained phenomena or UFO news stories. I don't normally do this, but I am contradicting it. And I'm going to tell you why. I've done a couple of videos on the alien mummies presented to the Mexican Congress. They did this a few months ago. Jaime Maussan was behind it. Go and check them out. Long story short, Jaime Maussan presented two objects to the Mexican Congress, claiming that they were mummified remains of extraterrestrials. He was called all manner of bad names, not the least of which was a charlatan and a liar. Musan went and got more than a dozen professionals, professors, and the like from some very prestigious, from at least one very prestigious university in Mexico. Might have been another country. Anyway, he got some professionals to examine them and make a determination, and more than 10 of them signed a letter saying that the bodies were all natural and had not been tampered with. They were natural beings with some serious anomalies, like no lungs, and they had implants. One was pregnant with eggs. I mean, go check out the videos. You'll see what I'm talking about. That was a pretty bold statement. Signing that letter put their professional reputations and their careers on the line. These folks are serious professionals, okay? Now there's an archaeologist who says that the mummies are just dolls made of animal bones and held together with some kind of glue. Honestly, how fucking stupid is this? They took DNA. They had doctors come in and take DNA, and nobody noticed they were dolls. Nobody noticed that they were fabricated with glue. Nobody noticed. Really? Really? If this one archaeologist is correct, that means that Jaime Maussan and all of the people who signed that letter and the doctors who took the DNA from the mummies are either idiots or scammers. Either way, all of them, their careers are done. This one archaeologist, if he's correct, they're all done. They'll never ever be able to say anything with an ounce of credibility in their lives. Now, if all of these other people are correct, then that archaeologist is either an idiot or he's trying to participate in some kind of obfuscation. I tend to believe the doctors who took DNA samples and didn't notice that they were dolls. I tend to believe the professionals in the universities who examined them and did testing on them and found implants. I tend to believe, this is going to sound bad, I would trust Jaime Maussan's word over any archaeologist who counters him. Now, I would obviously listen to the guy because you never know. Jaime Maussan is human, he could be wrong, but he would never intentionally mislead people. He's a journalist, that's his job. And he's not like the journalist here in America that makes shit up and get Pulitzer Prizes for it, like CNN did with the Trump-Russia collusion thing and the laptop thing and all that. Look, when Jaime Maussan says something, you can take it to the bank. I have never seen him fabricate a story. Now, is it possible he's wrong about something? Yes, absolutely. But could the doctors who took DNA be wrong? Could these professionals in these universities who took the mummies and subjected them to medical testing and what do you call it with the internal scanners, EKGs and EEGs and there's a word for it. I can't remember what they're called. Where you put them in the machine and it maps the internal layout of the body. Yeah, they use those. Nobody noticed they were dolls made with animal bones and glue? That's fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid. I've seen the stuff. I would trust Jaime Maussan more than any other probably more than any other journalist in the world. There's very few journalists I trust, and Jaime Maussan is one of them. I've seen the stuff Maussan shows at lectures. He is a professional, and he's a respected journalist. His stuff is pretty compelling. The folks who signed the letter risked everything to do it. This is not to be taken lightly. I don't know what this archaeologist is doing. He's either spitballing and making a joke out of it, which means he has not seen the mummies, or he's helping the government to cover stuff up. The only other explanation I can think of there would be if all of these other people who put their careers on the line by signing that letter are all participating in a hoax, which I find highly, highly doubtful. I'm sorry, if you're a doctor and somebody asks you to test DNA, you don't take the sample without getting a rundown of the patient. You don't do it. I used to work in a lab. I understand. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a medical professional. I did not operate in the lab, but I used to work in that lab and I saw how they function, the conditions that they had and everything. If it was fake, they would have known. The people doing the DNA would have known. The Chipute discovery, and I hope I'm saying this guy's name right. Chipute was an archaeologist. It's a man's name. He's Chinese, as I understand it. So I'm hoping. I think he's Chinese. My contention is it's a man's name, so you probably read it correctly. I'm just saying. I've done videos on how the scientific community hides certain facts that contradict their story of human and world history. They've been teaching this story for more than a century, and they don't want to deviate from that. Lord only knows why. Check out my videos on unexplained phenomena, especially my video on Michael Cremo's book, Forbidden Archaeology. My wife has bought me that book, and man, it's really good. It's a bit of a difficult read because this guy is not... He's not an author per se. He's a scientist, so he writes like a scientific journal. So it may be a little tough to get through, but the information is, oh my God, prime. This guy knows his stuff. Okay? Michael Cremo is brilliant. Now, I recently read an account from a very reliable source of a story I had never heard before, and I figured I'd relay that story and give you my input and my opinion. Back in 1938, an archaeologist named Chipute, Chiputei, he made an odd discovery. He was working in the, I'm going to try to say this right, Bayan-Kara-Ula Mountains. Bayan-Kara-Ula. The Bayan-Kara-Ula Mountains, near the Sino-Tibetan border. He found a regularly aligned row of graves beneath cave drawings of beings wearing helmets along with depictions of the stars, the sun, and the moon. Now, he excavated these graves. He found that the graves contained small, frail skeletons with unusually large skulls. Chipute theorized that the remains were those of an extinct species of small mountain ape, and that the cave drawings were left there afterwards by humans. Now, since apes don't bury their dead in systematic rows, his theory was laughed at and the incident was forgotten. And, keep in mind, in 1938, people weren't really talking about aliens, so, Then, in 1962, Professor, I gotta try to get this guy's name right too, Tsum Nui. I'll spell it for you. Tsumumnui. Tsum Nui. And I'm butchering these people's names, and I apologize. They're good people. They deserve to get their names said right. Everybody does. Now, anyway, in 1962, this Professor Sumun Nui of the Academy of Prehistoric Research in Beijing began translating stone plates that were found among the graves. The translation told a very, very interesting story. According to the stone plates, a group of beings crash-landed on the third planet of this star system about 12,000 years ago. When they could not repair their craft, the group tried to make friends with the mountain tribes in the area. These tribes, the tribesmen, proceeded to hunt them down and kill them due to their non-human features. This translation and the story were also dismissed because accepted archaeological and paleontology says that humans on this world didn't exist in their current form 12,000 years ago. Enter Michael Cremo and all of the other scientists who have found an abundance of evidence that says humans have been an advanced species on this planet far longer than 12,000 years ago. I named this video Unexplained Phenomena because at this point, one has to ask the question,
If we've had evidence of alien visitation to this world, including physical remains of alien beings, why aren't these stories being rewritten? Why has DNA from these skeletons not been tested? Now, in 38 and even in the 60s and the 70s, DNA wasn't what it is now. But now it is. Now, I realize that at this point, Communist China is a very closed society. There has been evidence of multicultural presence in China for decades. This presence was proven in the form of mummies found which predate the 1800s by a long, long while. The place was the Tarim Basin. And these weren't alien mummies. These were mummies of red-haired people, European types, that kind of thing. But China refuses to acknowledge this find because that would mean there were non-Chinese people living there centuries ago. I understand that there are political reasons for this. But evidence, real evidence of alien beings visiting this world would change everything. Human beings would be forced to acknowledge that we are not alone in the universe. I cannot help but think that this would melt away our differences and unite us as a species. Maybe that's the real issue. Maybe there are people on this world who thrive off of these differences and refuse to allow any changes to the status quo. And for that, we all suffer. That's the part I don't get. That's the unexplained phenomena of this video. This guy found these back in 1938, and everybody laughed at him when he said it was mountain apes. Okay, fine, it's not mountain apes. In 1962, this other professor at the Academy of Prehistoric Research in Beijing translated stone plates found in the graves, and he finds out that, gee, they're aliens. And nobody's bothering to do DNA testing. Why? There's got to be a reason.
Dragon bones. Everyone has seen the exceptional special effects of the dragons in modern cinema, especially in movies like The Hobbit and in the series Game of Thrones. Dragons inspire the human imagination like no other animal in mythology. Every culture on earth talks about dragons in one form or another. In the Bible, there are passages that refer to Satan as a dragon. In the 8th century, St. John of Damascus wrote of a Roman army that fought and defeated a dragon. In more recent times, dragon-like creatures have been reported all across the globe. I put 2 of them here in the Old West, Americans of all persuasions, from Texas to American Indian reservations, American Indian tribes. They were all reporting flying reptiles. Excuse me. In Van Meter, Iowa, in the 1930s, an 8-foot bat-like creature with a horn that projected light was reported for several days. And at one point, I think there were 2 of them. Most of the time, such reports are dismissed as flights of fancy, tall tales, and myths. And, let's face it, if somebody says, I saw a dragon in the sky, people kind of look at it, okay, yeah, you're a little weird, However, in October of 2017, farmers plowing a field in Zhangjiakou, I hope I'm saying that right, it's in China, Zhangjiakou, a rural community outside of Beijing, uncovered a most curious set of skeletal remains. The fossils are 60 feet long and serpentine. The head has horns, and the arms have prominent claws. The finding of these fossils has been verified. It did, in fact, happen. Oddly enough, nobody has done any DNA or other testing to verify the fossilized remains as some kind of odd snake or a hoax. And that's the thing that gets me. People find stuff all the time. Usually it's verified or dismissed as a hoax through DNA. The fact that nobody is trying to test the find is odd. One would think in the modern world somebody would in China would be demanding to test those. The locals swear that it is dragon bones, and for all we know they might be right. Without DNA testing and some sort of a serious investigation, we have no idea. We honestly don't know. If anyone has any more information, please put it in the comments. I'm sure we would all like to read about it. But the pictures and the videos online went viral, and people, the local law enforcement verified that they did find the bones, and the bones are real. Now, if it was the Chinese government saying it, well, I suppose being communist, everything is the Chinese government over there, but you don't know. Again, we don't know. So, until somebody does a serious investigation, we won't know. But what I saw looked pretty freaking convincing.
The moon tower. Now, I've done videos on unexplained findings on Mars, on the moon, on Venus, and throughout the solar system. There's a whole bunch of them. Go check those out. I've done some stuff on the moon, but I don't recall doing this one, so I'm going to do it. And if it's duplicative somehow or other, I apologize. But I read this, and I don't remember ever reading it before, so I very seriously doubt I did a video about it. In 1965, Russian space probe Zond 3 was en route to Mars. As it passed the moon, it captured some of the first detailed images of the moon's far side. The pictures from this probe were very detailed and showed a wider area of the moon than had been shown before. It showed about 70% of that area. The images were from about 10,000 kilometers away. One of the images showed a structure, a tower, on the moon's surface. Using the distance and the surrounding landscape with known objects, and the tower was calculated to be about 3.5 miles tall. They used the distance with the structures around it that we knew the size of. This tower is about 3.5 miles tall. Now, there is no known natural occurrence which would account for a tower that tall on a barren world, especially one that's constantly pelted with asteroids. A mountain, yes. A tower, no. Any one object which is inexplicable could be dismissed. We just don't know what caused it yet. But the sheer number of anomalous objects on the moon, and for that matter throughout the solar system as a whole, simply cannot be ignored. There is no way so many oddities can be naturally occurring. If they exist and they are not natural, then they must be artificial. Artificial, folks, means that someone or something built them. If someone or something is building such oddities and leaving them all over our solar system, we know it's not human beings. We're just barely getting... Our Voyager program is still going. Voyager 1 and 2 and like that. We've got a few other probes out there, but we're not building stuff on Mars. We're not building stuff on the moon. That means it's aliens. I'm just saying. Now, there's a lot to take in. There is a monolith on the moon of Phobos. There's anomalous objects moving through our solar system. I've talked about them, the solar cubes and things like that. In my opinion, there is a lot of activity in space that we're not aware of. We're only now becoming aware of. And I gotta say this, a lot of this stuff is being suppressed by NASA and other government agencies. If you want everybody to know everything, let me rephrase that. If you want transparency, we got to know this stuff. We got to know if we're not the only ones in the universe. We got to know this stuff. Right now, our Congress is having hearings on UAPs and like that. We have witnesses coming forward. We have insiders that are blowing the whistle on government programs. One of the ones that come to mind, Dr. Stephen Greer. Now, I don't like his lifestyle, but it's not for me to say. I'm not begrudging him that. But he did one thing that I do like, and that's the Disclosure Project. According to Dr. Stephen Greer, we have black budget programs in the probably by now in the trillions that are off the books. The Pentagon is out something like $2 or $3 trillion that we can't account for. And it makes sense. If we have more advanced things going out into the universe, we need to know because we're paying for it. You know, if there are aliens out there, we need to know because we have to prepare for that. The Nimitz encounters that I talk about in the video UFOs Evidently, go check that one out. The UFOs that were encountered there, our pilots, they had nothing. They couldn't touch these things. If those things are flying around in our solar system and in our world, in our skies, under the ocean, that kind of thing, then we need to know about it. Because obviously our military cannot protect us. It is their stuff, the alien or whatever it is stuff, the unknowns are so advanced. We got nothing. And we need to be able to prepare for that. If these aliens are I don't know if the moon used to be a refueling port or something. That's what, so they can hit that tower and refuel or whatever. I don't know. Nobody does. That's the thing. It's unexplained. If that is the case, I'd kind of like to know about it, and I'm sure everybody else would too. In the Temple of Seti, the Temple of Seti I in Egypt, there exist hieroglyphs which simply cannot be explained. However, they are so clear and plain that they cannot be ignored either. These depict very clearly a helicopter, a submarine or a modern cabin cruiser. Some people think it looks like a tank. And a flying saucer spaceship. Keep in mind, these images are 3,000 years old. Okay? So 3,000 years ago, somebody carved a picture of a modern helicopter, a modern submarine, a modern flying saucer, spaceship type. These things were there 10 centuries before Jesus walked the earth. Okay? I'll give you a little frame of reference there. Jesus wasn't going to be around for 10 centuries when they carved these things. Okay? That's how old they are. Theories of how they came to be are many, and some are pretty far-fetched. Alien visitation and time travelers are the favorite theories. Many believe, now this is this is what mainstream archaeology wants you to believe. Some old carvings were filled in with plaster and then recarved, creating an amalgam of two different pictures called a palimpsest relief. Palimpsest. Palimpsest relief. Now, Egyptians were infamous. Whenever a new pharaoh would take over, he would destroy all the carvings of the old guy. So I understand why they would come to that conclusion. But you got to understand, I don't believe that with this particular case, because these pictures are too crisp and too perfect to be any kind of an amalgam. With an overlaid picture, there would always be imperfections, and there would be, extra lines, extra carvings. Some of the plaster would have fallen out, that kind of thing. That you don't see that here. There would always be imperfections. You don't see that here. One look at these hieroglyphs, and you can see that every line was deliberate, and the picture that they depict was 100% intentional. Regardless of how they were exposed to them, someone in ancient Egypt carved a helicopter, a boat, and a flying saucer. Okay? Some sort of a flying saucer type craft. The boat, there are people who think it looks like a tank. Personally, my wife and I think it looks like a submarine. But, I guess it could look like a cabin cruiser. But my contention is somebody intentionally carved a helicopter, that ocean craft, and a flying saucer type spacecraft. That much is certain. Those carvings are deliberate. I heard an article the other day, and I can't find it anywhere. I read an article, but I can't find it anywhere, saying that those carvings were in two different places, exactly the same. That tells you it's not, it wasn't accidental. There are those that scoff at the idea of an ancient advanced culture. Okay, fine, no problem. Then who taught the ancients about these craft? Who taught them about helicopters? Who showed them a watercraft like that, a submarine? Who showed them a spacecraft? Looks like a big flying saucer. Who showed them that stuff? Because they didn't pull that out of the ether. I mean, if somebody imagined that and just put it on there, carved it with intent, yeah, that's a hell of a person right there. That's all I'm.
All right. This man, his name is Michael Cremo. He wrote a book called Forbidden Archaeology. He has, in his book, sourced evidence. Now, again, I'm not saying I believe everything he says, but a lot of what he says makes sense. Because when you look at Baalbek, Lebanon, our ancestors did that according to these anthropologists and archaeologists, scientists. They say that our ancestors did this with not much more than rocks and bear furs, and they didn't have the wheel, and I mean they weren't much more than cavemen. Well, Michael Cremo's book Forbidden Archaeology, he says he has evidence that puts humans on this planet more than 200,000 years ago. There have been incidents where skeletal finds in material at depths that date them over 1 million years ago. Modern humans on this planet more than 1 million years ago. He recounted one story where in the gold rush in the California gold rush back in the day, they're digging into a mountain for gold, and they find relics, archaeological relics and skeletons at places that they shouldn't be. You know what I'm saying? And this is fresh mountains that have never been touched. If this happened once or twice or even a half dozen times, you could say, well, circumstances. Someone was in a cave and the cave collapsed on them, or someone fell into a crevasse and then later got covered up. That kind of thing. But the sheer number of these finds is staggering, and they've been finding them for a long time. But mainstream archaeology covers it up. They discount it. They find ways to fix it. Case in point, one of the chief opposers of this line of research, his name is Rainier Proch, P-R-O-T-S-C-H. Rainier Proch. He's German, so I don't know how to pronounce his name. P-R-O-T-S-C-H. He did a radiocarbon test and dated some of these skeletons at far less than 10,000 years, which puts it within the mainstream archaeological frame of reference, right? However, Proch was later found to have falsified many radiocarbon dates and was forced to resign his position. So this guy was found out to be a liar. Okay? Now, again, I don't believe everything that's in this book. I've not read the book. I've watched the video. This guy seems very credible. He's got sources. And this isn't just him saying it. He recounts stories and reports from different archaeologists all around the world. Okay? So this isn't an American thing. This isn't just one country. These are archaeologists from all over the world who are reporting the same things, and this guy is reporting them in this book. And it blows mainstream archaeology right out of the water. It makes them look like fools.
And I think that's the reason why they're fighting him so much. They've been teaching this little paradigm for so long. If Michael Cremos is right, why would anybody ever listen to him again? Because they're idiots. And I know that's a strong word to use when you're talking about a scientist, but when scientists change data to fit their narrative, that's not science. I don't care who you are. I don't know what it is, but that's not science. But think about this. I've been doing unexplained phenomena. The pyramids, the Baalbek Lebanon stones, the H blocks that I talked about. If Michael Cremo is correct, it helps. It goes a long way towards explaining all about these ancient megalithic sites all over the world. And I'm going to do more on the megalithic sites because they're fascinating to me. How did our ancestors do this? If Michael Cremo's right, it goes a long way to explain those. Okay? And mainstream science needs to catch up. That's all I'm saying. If a scientist tells you something that's just blatantly stupid, you kind of look at it and, you know. Well, they've been doing that for a long time.